extraordinarily bloody day. And we're not going to let price dictate sentiment. We're not going to focus on technicals because they lead us astray. If the market's rallying, we think the rally is going to continue. If the market's down, we think the market is going to continue to collapse. So I think we have to look at the fundamentals. And when we look at the fundamentals, we can ultimately remain calm and not worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, not worry about what's going to happen in 15 minutes, but worry about what's going to happen over a longer period of time, which ultimately matters. You're not going to make that much money in 15 minutes, but you're going to make a lot of money over 1, 2, and 3 months if you can hold and be patient and find good deals. So, what am I talking about? First, let's talk about the Fed, because that's the first thing that's on everyone's mind. The market has gone from pricing in a nominal, very minuscule amount of a chance of a 75 basis point hike on this coming Wednesday to an 85% chance of a 75 basis point hike this coming Wednesday. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to use the same logic I used to dispel the chance of a 75 basis point hike the last meeting when they took it off the table, so to speak. That caused the market to rally 3% from that confirmation to the highs of that day, and then was followed up by an aggressive sell-off. I'm going to have to use that same logic, unfortunately, but we have to follow the same logic. The market prices in a ridiculously high chance of a 75 basis point hike simply because inflation's high, not because the Fed has indicated that it's going to do so. And I'm very confident it's not going to do so because it has gotten into a position, a formulaic position, where it can let the market know what it's going to do, have the market do what the work is, adjust, and then simply follow through on what they have already communicated with the market. So what they've already communicated with the market is 250 basis point hikes at the next meeting, and then September look around. I think they're going to do 50, 50, 50. They've done 150. I don't think they're going to go 75. They said they essentially took 75 off the table at the last meeting, so they weren't actively considering it. It's possible that they actively consider it, but I don't think they're actively considering it for Wednesday. I think on Wednesday, the worst they can do in terms of 75 basis points is tell us, hey, we're actively considering 75 basis points at future meetings because inflation's high. However, the question is inflation really beyond what they were expecting? My assumption is, yes, it's still hot, okay? It's still hot. They are going to say it's still hot. But my assumption is they're going to say, whoa, inflation hawks, don't get too ahead of yourselves. We're not experiencing anything extremely unexpected right now. Why? Because when we begin quantitative tightening, it's not going to be an instant effect. Just like quantitative easing happened and wasn't an instant effect. There's a lag. Monetary policy has a lag. That's the way it is. If you look in any economics textbook, that's the way it's always been. If you look at what's happened here, quantitative easing didn't occur in March and April of 2020 when they first started doing it. It took a year. I don't think quantitative tightening is going to take a year. We're going to see it much faster. As the saying goes, we take the stairs on the way up and the elevator on the way down. We're going to see that tightening come in, but it's not going to be instant. So maybe next month we see it. I think it's certainly possible, given all the carnage we're seeing pretty much everywhere. And finally, we have to get to stock prices. I think stock prices are no longer reflecting fundamentals. We'll give you 2 examples, and then we'll start to address the recession question. The first example is Disney. Disney is currently trading at 5-year lows, beyond 5-year lows. The only time in the last 5 years we've seen these levels was briefly in March 2020, and we saw what happened there. Why do I think this is ridiculous? Well, Disney has added Disney Plus, which it didn't have 5 years ago, has seen that business that is very good and will be high margin, if it's not already. I believe it's not, just based on content spend, but it's going to be a phenomenal business. You're going to take Disney, what it was 5 years ago, and give it streaming memberships. That's phenomenal business. It is cheaper than it was when it didn't have Disney Plus. And Disney Plus has surpassed the broad array of estimates by a lot in terms of user adoption. There was this question of, are people going to adopt multiple streaming services? Well, the one streaming service that seems to be adopted regardless of the others is Disney Plus. People are not shying away from Disney Plus. They've got legacy content, they have products they can sell, they have parks you can go to. And it is a better business, in my opinion, than Netflix. And despite all of these, attributes to it, it is trading below the price it was 5 years ago. So that's quite ridiculous, in my opinion. One last thing, I want to go back to the Fed for a sec. In the last week or so, we have added 4 additional rate hikes, a full percentage point of rate hiking, 25 basis point hikes by the Fed. I think we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves in this department, and I think come Wednesday, we might find that out. Will the market sell off again because people say, oh, inflation is going to continue because the Fed's not being super hawkish? I just find that argument super hard. And you could say, well, inflation really isn't a Fed problem at this point. If you look at the actual inflation, it's things like energy that are causing problems. And that's true. It really is a whole lot of things outside the Fed's control that are causing inflation. Energy, food, etc. I just saw earlier today that the White House wants U.S. companies to start buying Russian fertilizer. Maybe that's a good sign things go in the right direction. We'll see what happens. I think a lot is negative right now and preparing for the worst. And I don't think it's necessary to prepare for the worst. I don't think it's necessary well, maybe it is to prepare for the worst, unless your portfolio is essentially just cash and shorts, and then I think that might not be a good thing at all. But on the worst, a lot of people are fearful about a recession. And there are some people who say we're gonna get one, like Jamie Dimon, a hurricane. But he doesn't know, like he said, if it's a mild hurricane or if it's a they're not worried about a recession. Barclays, not worried about a recession. So if the Fed is being perceived as going very, very, very far, all of a sudden, even more hawkish than they previously were, and a lot of people are fearful about a recession, well, that's obviously adjusting equity prices. But what if we don't get that? What if the very consensus, bearish perspective that seems to be permeating around the market by analysts and not necessarily CEOs comes true? And obviously the market action. I mean, one thing, I know I don't use a script here, so I'm kind of giving you everything that's important to think about. This market has entered bear market territory, down 20%, 3 times faster than the dot-com bubble. The dot-com bubble saw stocks rise, I believe it was 500% over 5 years leading into the peak. This market saw stocks rise 200% over 5 years leading to the peak. Microsoft in the dot-com hit 60 PE, here hit 35 PE. Microsoft bottomed in the dot-com at 22. It, I believe on a forward basis, is 24. So I'm seeing all the metrics by historical measures that things are being priced accordingly, even for negative future outcomes. And certainly rates rising is a negative outcome. No question about that. People bought bonds a couple weeks ago. The 10-year went from 3.2 to 2.8. That's because people were buying bonds. They weren't putting money in the stock market. They were putting money in the bond market. But now we've got a 22% correction. And I think that's enough. Maybe it's down tomorrow. Maybe it's down Wednesday before the Fed. But hopefully, I'm not saying the Fed's got to put. I'm not saying the Fed's here to save the day. They're not. But I think the expectations of them are farther reaching than even what they're going to do. So that should be a positive surprise. Hopefully the market can cling to that positive surprise. It didn't last time, I thought last Fed meeting was good and a very good sign of a bottom and could have given us a soft landing. Now we've had what obviously is a hard landing. We went down to a sharper trajectory, all because the Fed took 75 basis points off the table. But if you listen to the Boeing CEO, he says they're experiencing the most robust demand ever. That stock was the Dow laggard, the worst stock on the Dow today. And the CEO said they're experiencing their most robust demand ever. I think that should give you a picture of the whole situation. Oracle just beat earnings. It's up 10% after hours. It was down 3% today. I mean, these companies are not acting like the market is. And they're the companies that we're investing in. I think the market is just driven by emotion right now, so aggressively. Target is at the center of inflation forces. They have to pay employees, they have to pay gas, they have to fill stores with supply chain products that are going up, etc., etc., etc. They compressed their margins to 2% because they miscalculated how spending was going to go. They had all this excess inventory. They're going to dump it. 2% margins. The next day, they increased their dividend by 20%. This is the company at the center of inflation. If inflation is going to continue forever, if the economy is going to slow, if everyone's going to have to get worried, why the heck would they increase their dividend 20%? Well, guess what? They expanded their margins for Q3 and Q4 this year to 6%. They expect things to not be so bad. Just like virtually every CEO in the country except Jamie Dimon and Elon Musk. I know they're great CEOs, but Jamie Dimon, he happens to be in a very conservatively positioned bank. I'm not calling into question what he has to say, but his equity analysts say otherwise. The economic analysts say otherwise. And Elon Musk. I love Elon Musk, okay? I don't know if he's got some special knowledge here. I would love for him to say more on it. He obviously has seen a lot of things. He's been part of PayPal, but I'm not seeing it. And other people aren't seeing it. GM and Ford aren't seeing it, and their numbers are down, and they're not seeing it. So we'll have to see what happens. But as of right now, I think there's so much negativity, so many downside forces, and I don't know if they're all holding up. I think we've gone to like 99% certainty in the downside case, at least in terms of market action, and I just don't think that's actually what's happening. I mean, Boeing, right? That stock is near COVID lows. COVID lows. And the CEO just said they are having their most robust demand ever. They've got debt on the balance sheet. I get that. But the stock was the worst performer today. And they are experiencing their most robust demand ever. Doesn't make sense, if you ask me. Oracle beat earnings, up 10%. Target hiked their dividend. These are the fundamentals I'm looking at. So we'll see what happens. That's today's video. And until next time, peace out.